Welcome, curious learners, to the deep dive. Today, we're taking a shortcut to getting informed about, well, a really profound and often unsettling topic: family, memory, grief, that whole intricate landscape. We're diving into some powerful stuff. Excerpts from Anne Enright's acclaimed novel, The Gathering.
Yeah, and this isn't quite your standard literary analysis. Our mission today is more about extracting the key insights, the nuggets of knowledge from this really rich material. Think of it like we're mapping the emotional terrain of a family,
Yeah.
all through the eyes of one narrator. Raw, unfiltered.
Exactly. And it's a narrative that really shifts around past, present, fact, memory. It kind of invites you to question what's actually real. So let's unpack this complex web: stories, relationships, the struggle to make sense of loss. Get ready for some, I think, surprising facts and some pretty deep insights into the human condition. Okay, so our deep dive really kicks off with this stark, quite unsettling image. Veronica, she's our narrator, identifying her brother Liam's body in Brighton. And the details she notices, they're incredibly specific. This fluorescent yellow jacket, no underpants, no socks, and stones in his pockets. What did these vivid, almost ritualistic details tell straight away about Liam's final moments?
Well, that precision you mentioned, that's absolutely key. Liam's death, it seems so meticulously planned, the jacket, the stones. It turns something potentially chaotic into this act of profound, deliberate communication. The insight here, I think, is how even a life that seemed disorganized can end with such a chillingly organized statement. It forces you, the reader, and us to rethink intentionality even in death. Makes you ask, what was he trying to say?
A powerful contradiction, definitely. And then there's the immediate ripple effect, right? On the Hegarty family. Enright just plunges us straight into their unique, often complex ways of communicating after Liam's death. Veronica, she's the careful one. She has to make the calls to all these siblings scattered everywhere: Clontarf, Tucson.
Yeah, and you immediately see how grief lands so differently across this big family. Veronica talks about relaying the news in lines too slight and tender to trace. It suggests this really fragile, almost whispered communication network. And her mother's reaction just, oh,
Which Veronica knew was coming.
exactly. She knew would come out of her mouth. That tells you so much about a family where maybe emotions are often muted or buried deep down. Then you have Bia, the sister, saying, it's how Daddy would have wanted it, about Liam lying in state at home.
Right, revealing those unspoken rules and blame, maybe.
Yeah, those ingrained family rules, the underlying blame. And Jem, the youngest, his reaction is just blunt. Well, at least that's done. It suggests this raw, maybe resigned acceptance. It just highlights, there's no single right way to grieve, especially in a family with these complex, unwritten codes.
Okay, so moving beyond that initial shock, The Gathering really takes us deep into Veronica's own struggle, the nature of memory itself. It's huge. She desperately wants to write down this uncertain event from her childhood at her grandmother's house. She feels it roaring inside me, but then says she's not sure if it really did happen. That intensity around something so uncertain, it's profound.
Oh, absolutely. This unbearable memory she's grappling with, it shows as a key mechanism of trauma. The mind doesn't just, forget. It actively reshapes reality sometimes to protect itself. It blurs that line between what you perceive as truth and what actually occurred. The crime of the flesh she mentions involving Liam and Mr. Nugent. She imagines it so vividly.
Right, the description is bizarre, almost surreal.
Very. And then she calls it a false memory because it's unbearable. That's such a powerful insight into memory's fragility when faced with unbearable pain. It shows how our psyche can filter, even reconfigure, what we recall.
And then, in contrast to that hazy, really painful memory, we get these grounding glimpses of Ada, the grandmother, and her house in Broadstone, which Veronica calls a world unto itself. Ada sounds pragmatic, quiet, entire in herself, sewing with perfect civility. The house itself, always smaller than it should be, full of things separate and special. Veronica even speculates about Ada's past. Was she a prostitute? None. But then, the rent books. She finds them. Proof Ada paid rent for 38 years. A solid fact.
It's really striking, isn't it, how environments shape memory and identity, and how uncovering just one factual detail like those rent books can completely reframe a story you've told yourself. Ada's quiet, contained world. Maybe it offered stability, but maybe it was also a blank canvas for Veronica's imagination to, fill in the gaps about Ada's mysterious past.
Yeah.
That small, tangible detail, the rent books, it's a factual anchor against Veronica's vivid but maybe skewed memories. It highlights that constant push and pull between internal narrative and external reality.
Speaking of relationships, the Hegarty family dynamic is just incredibly complex, almost feels like a burden at times. Take Ada and Charlie, her husband. Their marriage sounds passionate. She says they were worn out from it all by their wedding night, but Charlie was always absenting himself. His charm, completely pointless. And then there's Ada and Nugent, the landlord. Their connection feels palpable, described as a mutual strength, a realization that neither would be the first to walk away. And Ada kept letters from him, which also show this relationship of sudden pique and petty cruelty. What does this all tell us about love and connection in this world?
Well, this whole tapestry of relationships really makes you think about the different forms connection can take. It's not always conventional love, is it? Sometimes it seems rooted in comfort or convenience or maybe even shared trauma. You see this whole spectrum, Charlie's kind of useless charm, Ada and Nugent's really complex power dynamic, maybe based on a shared resilience. And all these unspoken contracts within the relationships, it just underscores that what we might call love can show up in really diverse and sometimes, uncomfortable ways. That line about Ada knows what he sees, and she doesn't care. It suggests this defined understanding, something beyond just simple affection.
And sticking with relationships, Liam's death really strains Veronica's connection with her own husband, Tom. She talks about him exercising his right to sex the night of the wake. It's jarring, and how it makes her feel like a chicken when it is quartered. That detachment is just raw.
It really is. That scene powerfully shows the psychological impact of grief on intimacy. It often reveals these unspoken contracts or maybe the lack of real connection. Veronica's total detachment, feeling quartered, versus Tom's almost pragmatic approach to intimacy. It suggests a deep crack in their relationship. And if you pull back to the bigger picture, Veronica's feelings about her own family, it's this mix, isn't it? Love, deep resentment, and this powerful urge to just escape. The whole "don't tell Mammy" thing keeps coming up.
Right, that mantra.
It suggests they're all shielding their mother, but it's also a source of huge resentment for Veronica. She feels like this family is her own making.
Yeah.
It all come singly and painfully out of her. That's a heavy burden.
And that resentment definitely escalates into real anger, guilt too. She says she's in a rage with every single one of my brothers and sisters, blaming them for the burden of dealing with Liam's death. And she feels guilty for letting Liam laugh at himself through his drinking. It all ties into this powerful idea of shame. Veronica explicitly says, this is what shame does. A family, a whole fucking country drowning in shame. Such a potent way to describe feeling trapped by family dynamics.
Yeah, and the narrative really uses that personal anguish to shine a light on the sociological side of family systems, the collective shielding, the hidden resentments, this pervasive shame. It paints such a vivid picture of how unspoken rules and unresolved stuff can just saturate a family, defining relationships, individual identities, often leading to this cycle of blame and unacknowledged pain. It's really profound commentary on those invisible legacies, the things passed down through generations without ever being spoken about.
So given all this emotional weight, maybe it's not surprising Veronica develops some pretty neat coping mechanism. She starts driving at night a lot, often with almost perfect fear, she says, driving aimlessly until she ends up near Broadstone, Ada's old neighborhood, the place she'd been avoiding. And she even personifies her car's headrest, calls it a slumped figure, a crash dummy, who talks to her about patience, endurance, and maybe that people don't care about each other or not really. Then there's the Gatwick Hotel escape, this flying city where she can just shut her life for a bit and sleep. What do these sort of eccentric but maybe relatable behaviors tell us about her journey?
It's really striking how these coping mechanisms, even though they seem like escapism, are actually steps towards confronting her reality. The night driving, that symbolic car corpse, the hotel retreat, they all create this necessary space for processing, even if it's a painful space. It signals a move towards defining her own truth, separate from the overwhelming family story. It makes you think, doesn't it? How do we create those spaces for ourselves, physical or mental, to deal with our own histories, to carve out our own path, even if it feels like just driving into the night?
And this confrontation, it seems to lead towards a kind of painful acceptance. At the funeral meal, typical Irish gathering, ham sandwiches, crisps, there's this moment. Kitty sings, "Hard times come again no more," and everyone cries. It reveals this shared core of sorrow underneath everything. And Veronica finds this odd, quiet companionship with Azrael, the Undertaker. She calls him the person who comes after you have seen the worst thing. He represents the rest of my life, suggesting this quiet acceptance of death, maybe?
I think so. That process of confronting the past, even the really painful bits, it's essential for moving forward. That shared grief at the funeral, the symbolic acceptance represented by Asriel. It shows how acknowledging loss, embracing uncomfortable truths, can lead to a redefined sense of self. And a key insight here is Veronica's final decision. She realizes she has to tell the truth about what happened to Liam and Broadstone. She tasks her brother Ernest with relaying this very old news to the family. Right, with that crucial caveat, don't tell Mammy. It reflects her journey, doesn't it? From that internal chaos to taking a difficult but necessary step towards truth. Even if it means navigating all the complex family reactions. It's about finding her own voice, defining her own truth, finally, even if that truth is deeply uncomfortable for everyone.
Wow. What a journey we've taken through the gathering. It really makes you think about the power of memory, doesn't it? How what we think happened or maybe what we feel happened can be just as real, maybe even more impactful than the documented facts.
Indeed. Yeah. This deep dive into one woman's head, it really invites us to reflect on our own family narratives. How much of what we know is just passed down story? How much is personal memory? How much is shaped by our deepest desires or fears? The novel really underscores that the stories we tell ourselves and how we remember are fundamental to who we are, even if the ultimate truth is slippery, elusive.
It's such a powerful reminder, I think. Every family has its unique truths, its unspoken rules, its hidden histories, and just navigating that, accepting all that complexity.
Yeah.
Maybe that's the most profound act of self-discovery we can undertake.
So maybe consider this. How do your own deeply felt memories, maybe those uncertain events from your own past, how do they shape your present reality? What truths, acknowledged or not, lie at the heart of your own personal gathering?
We really hope this deep dive has given you a richer understanding, not just of a powerful book, but of that intricate, often messy, but always human process of trying to make sense of our lives.